Vanessa.
Awesome. Hello, everybody.
So welcome to those who have joined us on Zoom and those on Facebook. My name is Carolyn Ray, and I'm the publisher of JourneyWoman. And today our session is called Stepping into Bravery. And we have a very special guest and friend of mine, Vanessa McDonald, who is going to share her advice with us as we look into the future and can only imagine what we're facing at this point. Just a note that for those on both Zoom and Facebook, feel free to put any questions you have into the chat and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. JourneyWoman, for those who might be new to us, we're the world's first solo women's travel magazine, established in 1994. And I recently took over JourneyWoman about 7 months ago, and we just relaunched our website a month ago, approximately. And I would love you to take a look at it and let us know what you think. Our ethos is to embrace curiosity as our compass and seek, learn, and teach. So this session is part of a series of sessions that we've been doing on a variety of topics over the last 2 months to really empower our JourneyWoman community and also, give you some new skills and ideas that will help you as we get through this next stage. We have a virtual circle every Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, which is a small group session where we've been doing this now for 8 weeks, so we've got to know each other quite well. It was a lovely session, and Vanessa joined us on last week's session, and we talked about all kinds of things on that session. So let me get into today's session, which is with Vanessa, and Vanessa is the author of a book called The Brave Journal and a company called Courage Creator. And she and I met, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And we worked at the same firm, but not at the same time. And then we had friends who said, you must meet because you're going to have so much in common. You're going to love each other. And I remember the first time we had breakfast together. And well, at least for me, it was true love. And I was so glad to have met you because you're such an inspiring and remarkable person and lived all over the world in more places than me. You've lived in London and Paris and San Francisco and Toronto and probably other places I don't even know about. And I think you're extremely brave because you left a very, a high profile, well-paying job to really focus in on this and pursue your passion and start building your business and building your company and helping women. And I just love that about you. So, and I know your mission, as I understand it, is to help women access their inner courage and follow their dreams. And so today we're going to talk all about courage and bravery and how you can become the best version of yourself. And of course, the next question is, what does that have to do with travel? Well, we're going to talk about that too, because, and I think you've got a few exercises, Vanessa, that we're going to go through. And so if you don't have a pen and paper nearby, you might want to grab something because she's going to make you do a little work on. So I'm going to start in the spirit of curiosity with just some really quick questions about you. And then we're going to get right into it. Okay.
Sounds good. So, I want to say before we start though, is that thank you for that lovely introduction. And also the way you described me is exactly how I describe you, because it's not only was it love at first sight, but when I started this business, I wasn't really taking seriously at the beginning, the first person who couldn't wait to open doors and help me out was Carolyn. She set up a bunch of peer review groups for me and talked about it. And so I am very grateful for having you in my life and all of the iterations that we've got to be past colleagues and comrades and friends. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, here's my questions. What's the first stamp on your passport?
Oh, Brazil.
Oh, that was too easy. Okay, I have to give you a harder one. If you could travel with any woman right now, living or dead, who would that be?
My mom.
And why is that?
Because we go to Brazil to visit her mom.
What's the number one thing you never leave home without?
Phone.
When you're traveling?
When I'm traveling, phone, still phone now.
Okay. Where do you wish you were right now? I think there's probably a theme here.
Oh, so many, but the place I've been dreaming of is Paris at the moment. So Paris.
I didn't know if you might say Venice, because I know you loved Venice last year.
Yeah.
If your heart could speak a language you don't, what language would that be?
Courage.
Oh, is courage a language?
I think it's the language of the heart.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So I might just turn things over to you, but I would like to know, or perhaps you could share, why did you leave your job to do this? And how did you find the courage to do that? And a little bit about how you developed the Brave Journal, which is your first book, and I know you're working on a second.
Yeah. So where do I start? I guess I'll tell you the story of how this all happened. And it starts a couple of years ago. I had just turned 40. And I think when you hit those kind of milestones, you get to the moment where you start to review. You make that 30,000 foot view and go, oh, am I living the life that I imagined I would be living? Is this the next thing? Am I on the path of what will make me happy in 10 years? And just those kind of review questions. And one thing that had happened, even though I was and loved the job I was in, I knew I was playing smaller than I could be. And what happened one afternoon is closing the television and getting rid of all the distractions. I sat with an empty piece of paper and I wrote, "Why can't you be brave?" Because I knew I was playing small. And from that question came what became the outline of the Brave Journal. And I wrote it very quickly. It was a very interesting experience. Anyone who's been in a creative industry, I hope you've had this experience where it's true flow. And I've had it only very few times in my life, and this was one of them. And it was this experience of, this is what it is. And I immediately wrote it and had imposter syndrome. Like, who are you to talk about bravery? You've had a lot of privilege. You've had wonderful experiences. You walk through the world with certain rights that others don't. And I immediately wrote it and put it in a drawer. And it wasn't until a friend of mine, actually, I told her about the idea a few months later, and she said, "You have to print this." And that's what I did. And I needed that friend to give me the license to do it and put it out and through the world. And the premise of the Brave Journal, which I'm going to walk through with you guys a little bit, that's part of the exercise, really is taking one step each day. And that was really what I needed to do to write the book, get it out into the world. And it led me ultimately to the steps where, even though I was in this job that I loved, I knew I was once again playing small. I had gotten to the point where I'd written the book and then I'd stopped. And it finally took me getting uncomfortable to continue to grow. Growth generally is something that's hugely important to me, and self-development work. And this was the next step. So I kind of came up to that wall where I knew I couldn't be living in truth and in integrity with myself if I continued to talk about bravery, because at this point I was talking about it externally and still in this comfortable job and taking a salary. And it's not fair for the company or for myself, because you need to make space for the next thing. And so that's what I did. I sold 90% of my possessions, kind of like Carolyn did as well, and stepped out into this new entrepreneurship adventure.
Oh boy. And I remember the day because I saw you that day.
Yeah, so, actually, you were one of the people who really, I was kind of in my head, and I think we all do this. We engineer the small life because one of the core human needs is certainty. And I had this certain structure and I thought, it'll be fine. I can make it work. And, who are we kidding ourselves? And it was Carolyn who I said, I will just wait until the end of the year. I think I'd put some timeline on it. And you're like, no, just do it. And that was one of the voices that forced me to come home and go, okay, what does it look like? What's the next step of this? For me, it was selling all of the furniture to create the space, to rent out the apartment, to be able to do this. And yeah, you were one of those triggers that asked me that question.
Well, I actually tell everybody to do that because I have seen it so many times where women hold themselves back, and once they put themselves out there, and in a way, you're forcing yourself to do it.
Yeah.
In a way like no other. But my answer is always to do that. So just so anyone else knows who wants to ask me about career advice, I will always say, go do what makes you happy. I'm going to put you on full screen, Vanessa, and let you do your little lesson for us today and teach us something new.
Great. All right. So this is not going to be painful, I promise, even though we talk about getting comfortable, getting uncomfortable. And really what this is a 6-step process that led me from writing this outline of the Brave Journal to ultimately living a life as an entrepreneur and exploring and going up and down, because my goodness, is it ever a journey that I'm still very, very early in the stages of. So the first step is called Step Into Your Truth. And really what that is I think we get an inkling that there's something in our life that's just not working. And anyone who is listening to me right now, you probably know what that is. So step 1 is really claiming it. And when you write things down, you create power around them. So it's as simple as just taking a moment and writing down what that thing is. And you don't have to write down the goal. You can write down the category at this stage. It could be my health. I know I'm playing small in that area of my life. Or it's the fact that maybe you want to be an entrepreneur too, and you have no idea what the next step is, but you know this is something that you are hiding from your truth on. And actually, I want to backtrack quickly and talk about something that we were going to talk about, Carolyn and I, the idea of courage being the language of the heart. So where I get that from is the Latin root of the word courage is cor, it's core. That word means heart. And I believe that courage is the ability to speak your truth from speak your truth from your heart. And it's uncomfortable and it's scary, but we must do it. There's something that we all carry in that we must do. We know we must do. For me, it was the Brave Journal. I felt, even though I could see all the justifications and the rational reasons why my life would be better continuing on the path it was, I just had to do it, as scary and as uncomfortable as it was. And I believe we all carry that song on us. And it could be simple in this particular moment of your life as, you know what, I'm eating way too much bread and I just need to stop. It's something that you know you are doing that is no longer working. So that's step 1, that's claim it. And take a moment and write that down. And then we're going to play with it. We're going to take one of the steps that's also from the JourneyWoman value system and get curious about that step. So in the Brave Journal, which I actually haven't shown you, this is what it looks like. So these steps are all kind of, you go through in the book itself. The next step is called Make a Brave Bet. So once you have claimed it, you have to cultivate it and get curious about that. And really what the Brave Bet is taking that next step and thinking about the second thought you had. So let's say that step for you is travel. I wanted to travel to France this spring. I couldn't. Second thought, of course, is going to be, you can't travel. The border is closed where I'm living and talking to you from Canada right now. And that's probably the case with a lot of you. So that is the thought to get curious about. And if it is something like travel, or if it is, I'm eating way too much sourdough toast, because apparently everybody's baking sourdough bread, then start to get a little bit curious about why can't you do it? And what is the thing that you ultimately want that you can somehow achieve in another way? So if we say it's travel and going to France, which is something that I've been thinking about and wanting to go, but obviously can't, what is the satisfaction I'm going to get from it? For me, the travel is about curiosity. I lived in my early 20s in the city of Paris, and I love the city, and it reminds me of that period. And I get a lot of creativity when I've gone there, and I've traveled there and multiple times since living there. So for me, the feeling I get is this feeling of independence and being re-inspired. Okay, great. So that's the what if. And what if is really taking your problem statement, which is that second thought you have after you've claimed the thing, and start to get curious about what if you could do or have an element of that brave bet right now. So let's take my example of Paris. What if I could feel that creativity and inspiration without leaving my home at the moment? What would that look like? And for me, with the example of Paris, that looks like getting lost in the stories of fiction, because I love the travel writing. The genre of French travel writing in particular, if anyone is a fan would know, anyone from Peter Mayle to Anne Mate, and there's just so many amazing writers who talk about living there and exploring the streets. And so there's probably a few books that I can spend 30 minutes reading in the evening and getting into the exploration of that space and reminding myself. And then there's also the creativity aspect. So maybe it's that I spend 30 minutes in the morning and just write. And that feeling that I feel I need to travel for, I can create in my life right now. And when you form the brave bet statement, which is what the journal takes you through, it's always a positive, I am affirmative statement, because you're embodying this thing. So let's say for me, for the next 21 days, I am creative writing in the morning, or I am capturing the spirit of Paris as I fall asleep in the evenings, or it's I am not eating bread. Whatever the thing might be, turn it into an I am statement. And that is what starts to embody your North Star, which is what the brave bet ultimately is. It's what you're moving towards, because we all, as much as we need that certainty that we talked about at the beginning of our conversation, we also need the uncertainty. That's another core human need. It took me a while to figure that out, but you need that sense of growth, that curiosity, that adventure. That's really what all of us who love to travel are constantly seeking. And you don't just have to have it on the trips that you're planning, you can have it in your life right now. So that's your brave bet. The third step is the roadmap. So if we all need a guide to take us to these steps. I've talked about a couple that I would take, but what are other ones? Maybe I can reconnect with a friend who's living in the city. Maybe I can start to read Paris Match again, or turn on to the French news channels that we are amazingly have so much access to now. Figuring out maybe as little as 5 to as many as 30 steps that you can take that can integrate for you the steps that make up that goal, that start to encompass those things in your life. So actually it's with the steps, what's important is it's as simple as a checklist. And there's a reason why, whether you're a pilot, well, pilots, or military sergeants or engineers who are building the planes that pilots fly in, still use checklists. It's the simple, most effective way to actually make sure you get done what you need to get done. I feel like we overcomplicate things sometimes and go, well, I can't do that because there's too many steps ahead, but maybe there's just 3 or 4 that you need to worry about right now. That's step 4, which is create your roadmap and worry about the next simple step that you have to take just today. So for example, to embody I am a creative person, the next step I need to take tonight is 30 minutes of creative writing, or reading a book of fiction around France, if that's what mine is. That's step 4. Step 5 is something that it's in the current version of the journal. I'm actually in the process of rewriting, having learned so much in the last year. And it's called Examine Where Your Attention is Leaking. In the next iteration of the book, it's got a different title. It's the Second Act of Bravery. The first act is that you claim it. The second is that you ask for help. All of us go through this process, this honeymoon process at the beginning, where like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going forward and I'm excited and it's wonderful. And then inevitably we come up against all the patterns in our life that have stopped us before, because no matter where we go, there we are. So recognizing that and having an awareness about them is, for me, I found one of the most effective ways to go through them. That can look as simple as, oh, when I watch Netflix and watch an entire season of a show instead of maybe one episode, I don't have time to read a book for 30 minutes in the evening, or do a 7-minute workout instead of eating my sourdough bread, or whatever the goal may be. So taking step 5 and just being curious about where you hide, where does your attention leak? Often when we don't want to do something, we procrastinate, we have certain habits that come up again and again. And that can be Netflix or social media, or and overworking, or being a little antisocial, which is easier right now for many of us than it used to be. Just be aware of those. And I also say with these kind of habits is don't limit them. or sorry, not limit them, don't stop them. I think it's unrealistic to say, I'm not going to watch any television in exchange for this. When I was building Courage Creator, the business, I didn't limit anything. I didn't cut anything off for myself. I just limited it. I didn't cut it off. I think that's really important, because when we are cutting things completely out of our lives, we start to feel like we're somehow removing ourselves from the things that are also fun. Give yourself the opportunity to have fun, especially right now. Don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. Just limit it for 15 minutes maybe, so that you can still do the other thing. And the final step is really like the hero's journey. Joseph, if anyone has ever read Joseph Campbell's Art of Storytelling, they might recognize some of these steps. And a lot of this these steps are very similar. They're the steps of transformation. They're the steps that any hero on any book you've probably read has gone through. The final one is the most beautiful. This is when you come back, and from the lesson that you've learned, you use it to serve and you share. So the Brave Journal, that's kind of how the book came out. It was something I originally created for myself, for me to get out of this rut of feeling small. But the reason it exists in the world is because we have this beautiful opportunity to teach and to share with each other. And by doing so, we make our lives better. This is what I love about the JourneyWoman community, is that it's an incredible, vast resource of information for literally any place you want to go in the world, but also the community of my life, my story is my lesson as well. And really, that's more than ever what community is about right now, and the opportunity we all have to share with each other. So those are the steps of the Brave Journal process. And I hope if you followed along, you've got a little bit of an idea of what your I am is. And maybe you can put in the Facebook chat, or if you're on Zoom with us, you can put your step. What is your next step that you're going to take in the next 24 hours? Let us hold you accountable to what that could be. So that's the process.
Great. I'm just rejigging here. So Vanessa, when you went through this yourself, so you gave a few examples. Are there some examples that are just kind of small, like maybe like the way you walk to work, or?
Yeah, actually, that is one of the ones that I started with. So within the Brave Journal, there are a bunch of brave builders, and what those actually are ways for you to change your perception, because I think it's a scary thing to go from 0 to 100, and it's actually a non-realistic thing. So for me, one of the first steps that I actually took was started to take a different route to work every day, to just get curious about, why did I take this super efficient route that shaved off something like 4 minutes, but I actually walked through a concrete jungle. And when I took the longer route, I walked through a park every day. And it was just this interesting change of perception. One of the other ones that's in the journal is I'm left-handed. So without thinking, every morning I get up and I brush my teeth with my left hand. And I started to try, what it would feel like to do it with my right. Not because I'm trying to be crazy, but because the experience of changing your perception starts to cross other areas of your life. So what other areas of my life can I change my perception of what I can't do? And that idea that I can, if you can't figure out how to do something, you can always ask somebody. But it's the idea that you can't, and then that's it, and the end of the conversation. I wanted to limit that for myself, because I was making this small container of a life that wasn't making me happy.
And how do you think, so when we think of applying this idea of bravery to travel, so we have in our community, for example, we have a lot of very experienced solo travelers. We have people that are, that might be fearful of traveling solo. We have women who do both, who travel solo, but in groups or in group tour. Like we have a whole mix of people, but how do you think that we could apply this idea of bravery and even a what if statement to travel, given what's going on right now, and frankly, how scary it is to even think about traveling again in the future? I mean, it's going to take a different kind of courage for us just to get on the plane the first time, I think.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's such a personal experience as well for all of us. What are the things that we need for our boundaries to feel safe, whether it's masks or the length of the trip and all of that. I think all of us we're going to all have to reach that at some point. Or are we just, no, not for the next few months or a couple years until we know there's a vaccine available. I think all of us, it's such a personal decision. I know for me, thinking of the time before, when I did my first few travels, I traveled to places and lived there for the first time. And that happened in Brazil and then in France were those two places in my early 20s that I went. And the reality is of those trips is the first couple times I kind of went and just stayed in the house, and quickly it took a while to venture out. And I personally felt comfortable venturing out once I made friends locally. So in the case of France, I was there for school, so I was able to make a couple friends, and that started to build a community, and then I felt comfortable. But I was really afraid to do that at the beginning. It's a very personal journey, but I think taking the one step that is okay for you and with your boundary is really the way to navigate it, whatever that step might be for you.
Mm-hmm. One of the great pieces of advice we got we did a solo travelers session like this a few weeks ago, was just try being a traveler in your own city. And, and it's a little challenging to do at this moment in terms of eating in restaurants and things like that. But you can, the advice from Brenda was to just act like you're a tourist, plan your day as you would in any other city, do some research, figure out where you're going to go. So even that is I think a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that will happen, and they're pure speculation and guesses. One is the caravan holidays of maybe, I'm dating myself, but I remember that being a thing when I was young, and the cross trips, like the great North American road trips. I feel like some of those will come back, but also the travel literature and be getting lost in the stories of travel. That's certainly for me how the reason I moved to France is because I read Peter Mail's A Year in Provence when I was in high school, and I had never read anything like that. That book totally changed the course of my life. I started to dream and decide I want to live in this and have these experiences. And I feel like that might happen again. You will start to get, at least for the short term, an inkling into other people's experiences through the experiences of others.
Yeah, well, we have a JourneyWoman book club right now, and I'm reading all about Portugal and thinking I need to go back there immediately. If not for the 300 days of sun, but certainly to go to the beach, which would be great. What about asking for help? Now, that's something that we as women sometimes have trouble with, because well, I'll speak for myself. I'll use I often feel like people will think I'm weak if I ask for help. But again, I've also learned over time that it's actually a strength to do that. But what's your perspective on asking for help, and where can people go if they don't feel comfortable perhaps asking somebody they work with?
Yeah, it's honestly, I feel like the worst person to ask in many ways, because like you, I kind of grew up with I can do it myself and I am good at doing it myself. But here's what I've learned. You can do it yourself, but it's so much better when you have other people helping you.
Mm-hmm.
The experience is better, the learning is better, because you don't have the best way all the time. Your way combined with someone else creates something truly new. And giving yourself the opportunity and the other person to serve is really what has been one of the best learnings about the journal. The first version of the journal was something I was embarrassed. What am I doing? I got it out without even sharing with people. I shared the finished product with them. And having gone through this editing process and a review process and it's just so much better with other people. And I realized we also live in a world today where you can ask for help from anybody anywhere in the world. And what a beauty to be in this environment right now where you can do that. So what do you need and what can you offer and what can happen as a result of that is really the questions that I have been working with myself and reminding myself to ask others and offer to others what could maybe help them too from my own experience.
Yeah, it's a great point, because even that how can I help you causes you to think, because we're not used to asking, and it almost like, I find when people say that to me, my initial reaction is, oh, I'm good, I don't need anything. And then I'll be like, hang on a second, there probably is something that I need help with, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely still a journey for me, trying to remind myself that it will be better, and it will be better for others because of the help. Yes, you can do it one way, but your way is not always as great as with someone else. So allow them to be part of the whether it's a creative process or building a business or whatever it is. But the getting into the habit of asking for help, that features much more in the journal now, because asking for help is an act of bravery. It's actually vulnerability. It's the moment of saying, I don't have all the answers, and I'm showing up, and I'm here, and I'm asking for you to be part of this. That is a grace that we offer to other people. And wouldn't the world be better when we all start to do that? The world needs that right now. So I think this is the work of courage in our coming months and years.
Do you, when you're doing your workshops and your coaching and your sessions, are you working mostly with women, or do men ever say, hey, I want to get in on that action and need some help?
It's interesting. I started the idea of the business helping someone who was like me, because I think we can often help those when we've gone through the transformation ourselves. I actually think that's an important part of coaching, is you need to have gone through that transformation before you can share it with another person. So I immediately went and structured the whole messaging around that. But what has actually happened is there have been men who have come up, because of course something like going into courage or trying to find the truth to live in integrity with yourself is not gender exclusive. But I had originally had the idea of helping and focusing on women who were like me 5 years ago, like me 2 years ago. But no, I've had both men and women come and ask for support in that area and transformation in their life, and in that specific, using that specific tool of courage.
Yeah, I would imagine. And I want to ask you about your roadmap too. So how do you do that? What's the tool? Like, because I like to build plans and put everything in a sheet and put it by month and put it in my calendar. What do you recommend to get people started? Because also there are a lot of people who don't do that, or aren't used to planning, perhaps, although I'd like to think our JourneyWoman women are very good planners and organizers, but and love to do research and things like that. But what do you recommend in terms of that roadmap?
So the journal, and we when we went through this, I say it's a checklist, and there's a reason that it's as simple as being a checklist. You do start with, getting it all down and getting messy. Plans are meant to be messy at the beginning so that they can be clear in life, and you write down all the steps that come off the top of your head. And the truth is, you won't have all the answers. You might have 5 of the things that you need, and the real list is like 35. But just getting it down and creating that checklist starts to bring the next question and the next step. And it's often not, oh, well, I don't know what to do next, but I know I need to ask. Running a marathon, for example, you don't know what's going to get you to the end. I certainly don't know how much you train. I know you train for a year, but I know the first step is run to the end of the block. And then maybe you're doing that and you're running 2 blocks, and then 15 blocks, and then you're doing some stretching, and then you're checking your diet. And in my case, I'm definitely calling my sister to help me on steps after that. But I can't do any of those unless I write down, run to the end of the block, get some gym shorts, runners. Those are my 3 steps right now. And each step begets the next. So really, I feel like we overcomplicate and put a lot of strategy on things, but really it's a checklist. And like I said, whether it's a pilot or a surgeon, they go with a checklist, because the way the human brain works is that there's a lot of margin for human error. So if we have it down where we can check it off, that's where to start.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think of the ways you learn discipline in your life. Um, I was not disciplined at all growing up, and this is not cool to admit, but I was in band. And I actually think that was the most discipline I ever got, was learning to be part of a team which is structured, and if you don't perform well, then the rest of the team doesn't perform well, and what steps do you take, and just the practice and the discipline every night after school, like all those things. We apply so many discipline to so many areas of our life, but we rarely apply it to our own personal development. And that's, yeah, so that, I think that's what makes it tricky, is how do you create those rituals, how do you create those ways to help you build discipline into your daily practice.
I think what you're saying is really powerful, because take band, for example. The reason you felt the discipline experience is because you made a commitment to this group, and you probably met them at 3:30 every afternoon after school. So why is it so easy for us to commit to another group and not ourselves? That there's actually, inside the Brave Journal, there's a commitment letter that you write to yourself before you begin the journey of the journal itself. And part of that is because it's very easy for us to especially as women, we're going to get all these things done for our family or our job, and everybody else gets taken care of, and you're like this wet rag at the end who has no energy left for yourself. And the idea of making the commitment to yourself, and the reason the journal is like 3 minutes in the morning and that's it, is because you're committing to one thing and you're getting it done, and embodying it before noon, let's say, so that your thing is out of the way and you have put your oxygen mask on first before you go and serve others, right? That's really the idea of it. And the more that we do that, the more that we are in integrity with our word to ourselves, the more we're able to do that and grow. Because it's like throwing a stone into a pond. You start with one little step, and you don't know the ripple effects that it has on not just your life and other areas of your life, but the lives of the people around you.
Yep. I just want to make sure our folks on Facebook have a chance to ask questions, because I've been asking a lot, because I find this all fascinating. So if you do have questions, let us know. The other thing I want to ask you about is coaching. Being a coach and kind of interweaving coaching with your own experience. We have both taken coaching. In fact, I think we took the same program for coaching. And I found that fundamentally changed my view on everything. What did you learn from coaching that's been brought into the Brave Journal? How do those two things intersect for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I started this journey, I was someone who, as I mentioned, I'm a total self-development junkie. If there's a course or a book, I've read it. I probably have a plan to, if I haven't already. And I find the world of growth and personal growth fascinating. And that we have this ability to change our mind and to choose a different mindset. Like, it's just, when I realized that for the first time, that's what fundamentally changed who I am as a person. And the program that we both did, it's CTI it's one of the International Coach Federation recognized programs that you train to become a professional coach. And one of the core pieces of it that I love is the approach is the people are whole, that you're not trying to fix something broken about the person. And I think that is really important. It's not about approaching anybody in a way that they need to be fixed. None of us need to be fixed. And I certainly can't fix you. I have enough stuff of my own that I need to fix. But I love the idea that it's someone who is putting themselves on the line for a transformation. And I am going to stretch them in that way, just as I have coaches that stretch me to grow out of my comfort zone. So it's an accountability partner. It's someone who's pointing out to you the places where you can say, I can't, because it's so easy for us to, I can't do this because of all of these reasons, most of them rational and legit. But what if you get curious about those responses? And the idea of a coach and the way that I coach is, let's blow up that what I can't, and let's figure out what it is. Let's figure out if the boundary that is here is actually here. And then once we're here, maybe it's even further. Like, what could your life be like if you stop telling yourself you can't?
Yeah. There's a question on Facebook about how did we learn coaching and where do we go? And I think you've answered some of that.
Yeah.
but just to provide a little more detail, what Vanessa and I both took was called coactive coaching. And it's, you can do it, I did it on the weekends over about a year, just because I got sidetracked a little bit, but you can do it, I think, in 5 sessions of 3 days each. And I actually did most of mine in New York because I just really wanted to be on my own. Don't know what else to say. Sorry, Toronto, but I wanted to be in a different place and have a different mindset, and just met an incredible group of people who are so giving, and the idea of coaching, as I see it, is to be of service to others. And I actually I quit my job during that process because I realized I was not going to be successful or satisfy my own requirements of my ambition doing what I was doing. So it's pretty transformative to go through and learn how to be a coach, because you practice on yourself and you practice on others, and then and it does uncover things that are really, really hard, really emotional, and you're very vulnerable. I don't know what your experience was, Vanessa, but that was mine. It just changed my life completely.
Yeah, it's in the process, it's actually a lot of the courses have moved online as well through Coactive currently are doing that. So it opens up different experiences for those going through right now. I think for me, one of the things I learned a lot on it, but one of the things is there's a moment in the earlier part of the program where you get a bunch of compliments. You sit in the center of the room and everybody's throwing compliments at you. And I think that was super uncomfortable for me, and I think for many of us, because the idea of receiving and realizing how little we allow ourselves to receive. This is why Ask for Help became such a big deal in the second iteration of the book, because it's so fundamentally important, especially right now, that we reach out to others, that we ask for help, and that we receive it, that we allow ourselves to receive more from what we have in our own little boundaries. If we can just change our perception of what's possible for us, we can truly change the world, I believe.
Yeah, that's so true, so true. Yeah, no, and I think my takeaway from that whole experience was you have a choice. And I actually wrote about it afterwards, because it was such an incredible moment for me to realize I could actually do what I wanted and quit my job. It was incredibly exhilarating. Anyways, I want to just make sure we've got any other questions from our Zoom and our Facebook crowds before we move on. And I also wanted to mention Vanessa's written a really lovely article that's on our website called Being Brave in 2020, which came out in our February newsletter issue. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a discount on the Brave Journal for JourneyWoman community members on our website too. Hopefully it still stands.
I need to check that, but I'm pretty sure it is. I'll make sure it's live by the end of the evening. I promise everyone. If it doesn't work for you, message me, but I'm pretty sure it's still live.
That's great. Well, Vanessa, thank you so much. This has been a lovely discussion and very inspirational, and hopefully we can do this again in the near future and see what other things we come up with. Now, when is your book coming out, your new one?
So the second edition of the journal, the Brave Journal, should be out a little bit later this year. And that's actually what I'm focused on right now. I think there's so much that I've learned from the coaching that I really want it to feel like a coach in your hand. And so all of my efforts have gone on to that at the moment. So it's the pre-sale is going to happen in July, and I will share with you details for your community at that time. But it should be live in September.
That's great. Thank you. And just a note for everyone listening, this session is an example of supporting women entrepreneurs like Vanessa. And if you know other women entrepreneurs, I would love to meet them. I would love to support them through JourneyWoman in any way that we can. And we also have a number of places on our website that we're trying to help them with products and things that are relevant to travel, of course, which I believe this is. We have another session on Thursday called the Travel Knitting Circle. If you're able to join for that, that's at 7 o'clock, and that's being hosted by JourneyWoman's very own web mistress, Melissa, and Amanda, and they're going to talk about knitting and travel. And then we have one next Tuesday called The Secrets of Bees, which is going to be live from Vermont, and tell us what we can learn from bees as travelers, which I think will be very interesting. And then I have a really big surprise coming on June 3rd, so save that date. We'll be announcing another lovely, lovely person to come and speak with all of us in the afternoon of June 3rd. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vanessa. Have a lovely afternoon, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Stay well, stay safe. Bye.